Greetings from India. My name is Stella Chitralekha Biswas, and I will be moderating today's session. I am an assistant in the current project of Tell Me Your Story and also working as a state aided college teacher at the Department of English, Sarojini Naidu College for Women, Kolkata. I welcome you to the stories of food and drinks shaping cultural identity and ideology, curated under TMYS Review September 2022 in collaboration with the York Center for Asian Research, York University, and Readomania. We are also calling for the submission of essays, poems, and short stories under the project. To know more about the submission guidelines and the project architecture, please visit www.tellmeyourstory.biz. This evening, I consider myself very privileged to be in the company of our esteemed panelists, Ms. Bhaswati Ghosh, Mr. Saikat and Ms. Ananya Mukherjee, who will shortly share their views and insights with us. The topic for today's discussion is religious history of food consumption under the sub-theme preparation of religious offerings and embedded biases. All of the panelists are experts in their area with many years of professional experience. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker for the session is Ms. Bhaswati Ghosh. Ms. Ghosh writes and translates fiction, non-fiction, and poetry. Her first book of fiction is Victory Colony, 1950, and her first work of translation from Bengali into English is My Days with Ramkinkar Baij. Her writing has appeared in several literary journals, including Literary Shanghai, Held, Cargo Literary, Pithead Chapel, Warscapes, The Minard, as well as in Indian Express, Scroll, The Wire, and Dhaka Tribune. She lives in Ontario, Canada, and is currently working on a non-fiction book on New Delhi, India. You can visit her at bhaswatiGhosh.com. We are delighted to have you with us today, ma'am. Thank you for joining the discussion.
Thank you so much, Stella, and Tell Me Your Story team, as well as a very warm welcome to my co-panelists, Ananya and Saikat. It's my pleasure to speak on this subject. It's
Ma'am,
really
can I
close.
interrupt you for a moment? I would like to introduce the other two speakers as well
Oh,
before
I'm
we
so
open the
sorry.
forum for discussion. It's absolutely
Yes,
okay, ma'am.
sure.
And I apologize for the interruption.
No worries.
Our second speaker for this session is Mr. Saikat Dash. Chef Saikat is a gold medalist chef and hospitality professional with over 12 years of experience across hotel and hospitality education. He has worked with top brands like Radisson Collection, Radisson Blue. Currently, he is working with the Academy of Culinary Arts, Nepal, as a culinary trainer and management faculty. During his stint in the Middle Eastern countries, Chef Saikat has managed to get a great deal of hands-on exposure to international cuisines. It is a pleasure to have you with us, sir. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Stella.
Our third speaker for the session is Ms. Ananya Mukherjee. Ms. Mukherjee, a former business journalist and a senior corporate communications leader, is an acclaimed writer with more than 1,000 publications to her credit. Her books, Ard Satya, The Half-Truth and Other Stories, and An Unborn Desire have received five-star reviews from media, critics, and readers. She has been recognized with the Shahidya Ghosh Samman for 2022 for her book An Unborn Desire. She has been rated amongst the top three female authors of 2021 and won the Changemaker She Excellence Award, the Tagore Commemorative Award, and the Inspiring Indian Award in 2022. We warmly welcome you, ma'am. Thank you for joining this panel.
Thank you so much for having me here, and a very warm welcome to all my co panelists as well.
We now open the forum for discussion. I would request Ms. Ghosh to share her insights on the topic. Ma'am, over to you now.
Thank you, Stella. So I would like to provide a bit of context and background before coming to the theme we are discussing today, which is religious offerings and embedded biases. Um, so the first time the appearance of food in a book shook me was when I read Om Prakash Valmiki's autobiographical account Juthan. That was more than a decade ago. I read the book in English translation, which retained Valmiki's original Hindi title. This wasn't in all probability merely a stylistic decision. It seems to have been a necessary one, for the word Jutan, like its Bengali equivalent eto, does not have a satisfactory English translation. The closest word that describes it, leftovers, feels falls way too short of what Jutan actually means. Scraps of food left on one's plate after they've eaten a meal. This is usually meant to be thrown in trash. In the book, Valmiki writes how members of the Dalit Chura community, the caste he belonged to, would be served jutan by their upper caste masters as wages for manual labor. Valmiki describes in excruciating detail how the Churas would collect the remains of the meals left behind from an upper caste wedding, dry the bits of puris they collected in the sun, and how he had to guard those pieces from crows, hens, and dogs. These dried bits, half eaten by other people, would be saved for the rainy season when they would be soaked in water and boiled to be had with chili powder and salt or with jaggery. I bring this into our discussion here only to highlight how caste biases are deeply embedded in not only the way food is prepared, but also how it is consumed and served in India. One of the most fascinating and slightly comical stories of this entrenched caste bias actually comes from Bengal, the part of India I trace my roots to. In my novel Victory Colony 1950, there is a minor character called Sharoda, who is a widowed Brahmin cook working at the house of Manoj Datta, the novel's male protagonist. Notice that while the Dattas are Kayasthas, who are lower in the caste hierarchy than Brahmins, they have employed a Brahmin cook. So, in another book called Men, Women, and Domestics Articulating Middle Class Identity in Colonial Bengal, Shopna Banerjee actually writes about a Brahmin manufacturing factory of sorts run in the 19th century by one Jagadananda. He was an Oriya palanquin bearer in Dhaka. To meet the rising demand for Bamun Thakurs or Brahmin cooks in Bengal, Jagadananda partnered with an Oriya Brahmin and began training non Brahmin Oriyas to turn into fake Brahmins so they could be passed off as Brahmin cooks. These men would be taught about Gotras, Dharma Shastras, the names of a few saints and sages, some shlokas, and how to wear the poite, also known as the janeyu, which is the sacred thread that Brahmins wear. Additionally, they learned basic cooking, and within a month, this factory produced cooks ready to be supplied to Bengali households. In turn, they would pay Jagadananda and his partner a percentage of their salary. In an interview to Telegraph newspaper, Ms. Banerjee explained the reason behind this phenomenon. Having a Brahmin cook, she argued, was a symbol of middle class status. As she says, and I quote, having a Brahmin cook implied an effort to climb up the ladder of caste hierarchy for for some lower caste groups who had become Bhadralok or genteel, and then employing a Brahmin, a priestly caste by a lower caste Bhadralok could also be a symbol of power for the colonial middle class. End quote. So this would explain, why the doctors of my novel chose to have a Brahmin cook, even when other servants employed by them were non-Brahmins, and as they themselves were. In a parallel instance, in many parts of the country, but particularly in southern India, especially Tamil Nadu, a top marker of Brahminism is adherence to strict vegetarianism. Some higher ranking non Brahmin castes, or sections of them, are also vegetarian. And interestingly enough, on the basis of this supposedly superior dietary practice, these lower caste groups also claim a higher status in society. So, as we can see, caste biases have had a distinct influence on people's food habits and behaviors. When it comes to religious practices, this instinct multiplies manyfold. We are seeing increasing instances of a more North Indian practice of refraining from non vegetarian foods during Navratri being imposed on other Hindu communities, even though Many among the Hindus, including Bengalis who worship Durga, they don't follow this practice. In his book, The Camphor Flame Popular Hinduism and Society in India, the historian C.J. Fuller describes an incident involving animal sacrifice that took place at a temple in Cuttack, Odisha in 1972. The goat identified for the ritual for the temple's presiding goddess Chondi, a form of Durga, was purified by sprinkling consecrated water on it. It was then worshipped by the temple's Brahmin priests with flowers, incense, food, and water, and a mantra was chanted into its ears for the liberation of its soul. The sword meant for sacrificing the animal was also worshipped. When it came time to slaughter the animal, however, a non Brahmin man raised the sword and killed the goat. So while the entire ritual is presided over by Brahmin priests, the act of slaughtering is relegated to lower castes as it is deemed inferior. Interestingly enough, according to Fuller's ethnographic research, in the Hindi speaking north of India, a distinction is made even among deities themselves when it comes to offering vegetarian foods versus meats to gods. A distinction is drawn, he says, between light, wifely goddesses, not called animal sacrifice, and dark, single goddesses who demand it. A parallel distinction is also made between Shiva and his lower form as Bhairava, to whom meat sacrifices are offered. An unmarried village goddess who goes by a variety of names but is invariably identified in part with Shitala, goddess of smallpox, is believed to demand bloody sacrifice. So, even while the majority of Indians practice non vegetarianism as a dietary preference, only 39% identify themselves as vegetarians, according to Hindu research, according to a Pew Research survey. We can Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Yeah. So I was saying, even though a majority of Indians identify themselves not as vegetarian, see how religious biases and social biases can myths to dominate or even control the narrative at a particular time. So those were my views on this subject.
Thank you very much for your invaluable perspectives, ma'am. I would now request Mr. Das to share his insights on the topic. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Stella, and namaste from the great Himalayan nations, Nepal. I'm Chef Saikat. So today I'm going to share my views on this topic, religious offering and embedded biases. So when we talk about this religious offering, the first thing that comes in our mind is the food offering. Now, sacred food as offering is a concept within the anthropology regarding the study of food as it relates to religious rituals. Now, many religions have prescription about the correct preparation and cooking of food, beside the taboo about the forbidden subjects like beef in Hinduism and pork in Islam. Now, many religion has special importance in their belief. Those food are considered to be the offering. For example, you have bread, which represent as the body of Jesus Christ in Christianity. Same way, coconut, which is used in modak, being offered to Ganesha in Hinduism, and also talking about the Islam. In Islam, you will find date, which is traditionally eaten at the iftar meal to break the fast in Ramadan. Now, this tradition has been set up by Prophet Muhammad to broke his fast by eating 3 dates at that time. Now, it is important to underline the embodied nature of the connection between the religion and the food, because religious experience via food is a physical experience. Now, it can vary widely even while following the same ritual practices. This does not make the ritual less powerful. Rather, it helps to bring it alive for devotees. Paradoxically, the religious expression is all the more real, meaningful, and supernatural because it is uh, new each time, even if it is as old as the old as our world. Now, each time a religious act involving the food is performed, it is experienced by the body in the moment of receiving, smelling, and tasting. And this strengthens the feelings and belief about the presence of holiness in the activities. Now, talking about the in rituals in Hinduism, the Hinduism parichakras plays a very important role in worshippings. Now, parichakras specialized in preparation of food offering, which we known as prasad for Hindu worship services, which are being distributed to the temple devotees. Now, every day in a typical Hindu temple begins with the puja, which includes an offering of prasad, which is prepared by the priest in the temple kitchen. Now, during during the festival or the day on which special worship services are being conducted, the offering of prasad may be more even elaborate. While preparing any sanctified food offering, the priest must meet certain minimum requirement of purity and austerity and abide by strict guidelines, such as prohibition of use of meat in food preparation or served in the temple, or limitation on the use of onion and garlic. In other words, we call that food as a sattvic food. Now, oftentimes, only certain kind of grain can be offered to the gods and goddesses. For example, Govinda Bhog rice. Now, cooking is often performed over the open fire while sitting on the floor. Generally, means cook in the temple kitchen as a prasad for the offering of the god. Now, cooking usually require meticulous cleanliness, and there are various convention according to specific tradition and strictness of adherence. Now, hands should be thoroughly washed before touching the food, and some will freshly bath and wear new clothes before they start preparing the food. Now, food should not be tasted or smell while cooking. There is a widespread belief that the consciousness of the chefs enter the food and influence the mind of the eater. For this reason, chefs or cook cannot taste or smell while cooking the food for offering as prasad. In Bengal or in some of the eastern part of India, there are rules that one who is not from the Brahmin family is not allowed to offer cooked food to the god as naivedyam. Instead, they are welcome to offer food like cut fruits, uncooked rice, or vegetables to gods. Sometimes they can also prepare puris or fried sweet, which is not considered as the cooked food, and uh, and they are not supposed to cook the rice preparation and even the vegetables. They are strictly forbidden. The non-Brahmins are strictly forbidden to cook this kind of dishes. So, talking about Islam, in Islam, the distribution of the food in the holy places is also known as hadiya, or in general term we call is langar. Now, the langar, this term has came from the Persian language, which is institutional among the Sufi Muslims in South Asia, whereby the food and drink are given to the needy, regardless of their social or religious background. Now, in origin in Sufism are tied to the Chisti order. Now, Langar Khana in the large dargahs have digs used for cooking food, fixed into a solid masonry in which generally rice, sugar, ghee and dried fruits are cooked together, which is also known as mitha chawal or zarda pulao. And then it is distributed to the public as tabarruk. Now, in this langar khana of Sufi dargahs, anyone can contribute in cooking and donating the ingredient in spite of their religion, caste, gender, economic status, or ethnicity. Similarly, in Sikhism, they also have a tradition to offer food to all the people who visit their holy place, that is Gurudwara, which is known as langar. Now, this is the community kitchen of Gurudwara, which serves meals to all free of charges, regardless of the caste, religion, gender, economic status, or ethnicity. The people generally sit on the floor and eat together, and the kitchen is maintained and serviced by the Sikh community volunteers. This meal served at the langar are always vegetarian. Now, this community kitchen, started by the Sikh gurus, was universal and accepting of people from all faiths and background to cook food and distribute it. A tradition which has continued these days. The type of food served and method of cooking helped the Sikh langar universally accepted by all faith and caste. Now, the concept of langar, which was designed to be upheld among all people, regardless of the religion, caste, color, creed, age and gender, or social status, was an innovative charity and symbol of equality introduced by the Sikhism by its founder Guru Nanak around 1500 in Punjab. The second guru of Sikhism, Guru Angad, is remembered in Sikh tradition for systemizing the institution of langar in all Sikh temple premises, where the visitors from near and far would get a free simple meal in a simple and equal sittings. He also set rules and training method for the volunteers who are called as sevadars, with the permanent chefs in the bigger setup of langars known as langaris, who operates in this kitchen, placing emphasis on treating it as a place of rest and refuge and being always polite and hospitable to all visitors. Now, it was the third guru, Guru Amar Das, who established the langar as a prominent institution and required people to dine together irrespective of their caste and class. He encouraged the practice of langar and made all those who visited him attend the langar before they could speak to him. Now, very interestingly, the culture of offering food in the religious place have more importance in Indian subcontinent as compared to the other parts of the world. So, with that, I rest my topic. Thank you, Stella. Over to you.
Thank you very much for your insightful observations, sir. I would now request Ms. Mukherjee to share her insights on the topic. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And there's so much knowledge and insight that I've listened to and I've heard from my co panelists. I'm not an expert. I don't have the insight or the knowledge that was shared here. What I have is personal experience, and I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to tell you some stories. Uh, Again, coming back to personal experience, I'm a Brahmin. I have the privilege, so-called privilege, of cooking the bhog that we prepare for the goddess or the gods that we pray at home, and I do that diligently. I have been doing that for the last 20 years, 25 years. But my story is about something else. It's quite different. We've been talking about biases. I want to tell you a story about acceptance. And this goes back to my own family. So, my great grandmother, mother, she was a landlady, a zamindar, so to speak. And we have a 200-year-old Kali temple at home, which requires us to prepare the bhog nearly every day because a priest would come and pray every day. And on Amavasyas every month, there is a proper puja, a big puja, and which means the ladies of the house get together and cook a very sattvic meal, bhog of khichuri, which is the Govinda Bhog rice, on no, because again, like said Dr. Chef Saikat just mentioned, only Brahmins were allowed or are supposedly allowed to prepare the anya and or make an offering to the gods. So the anya bhog would be prepared at home. There's a special kitchen. There is a non-vegetarian oven or stove or gas. You sprinkle Ganga Jal on it and you make it shuddh before you start cooking for the gods. And as Chef Saikat rightly mentioned, you're supposed to take a shower. You can't. You're supposed to cover your mouth. You shouldn't be speaking lest you spit. You shouldn't be breathing, tasting the food, or even when you're actually taking the food to the altar to serve. You're making an offering. Nobody should see. And I'm sure those of you who have maybe seen Durga pujas and community pujas, you would have seen that during folk time there is a screen is created so that nobody gets to see what that the goddess is eating or the bhog is being offered. So my story goes back to about 150 years when my great grandmother, Bindu Bashini Devi, who was managing the household and was solely responsible for the preparation of bhog of our goddess Kali, who is our personal god or the ancestral deity. And so she was preparing the bhog. In while she was doing it, a little Dalitish, I mean, we don't know what her caste was, but somebody came through and walked into the inner quarters or the Ondur Mohol of the house, and she was standing at that particular kitchen's door where my great grandmother was cooking. And my great grandmother, as biases used to be present in those societies, was very disturbed because this is not a place where the untouchables are allowed to enter. Number one, she was cooking this very holy meal for the goddess, and nobody else was supposed to be there. And this girl comes there and asks for food, or she doesn't even ask for food. She basically stood there, and Bindu Bashini Devi got very upset, and she drove this girl away. What are you doing here? You know I'm cooking bhog for the goddess. Go away from here. And she just shooed her away. And then she took the offering in the following all the right rituals and following all that was prescribed to her, and took it to the mandir, made an offering. And it was afternoonish, so she came back and she wanted to take a nap, prepare for the evening. While she was taking that afternoon nap, apparently she had a dream, and in that dream our um ancestral deity Ma Kali appeared in her dreams and told her, I'm not going to accept that offering you made to me. The bhog that you offered to me will not be accepted because I came to your doorstep today and you refused me. And now all this, this noise about making it all so holy and all so pious and all your beliefs and making it super special for me doesn't work because I came to your doorstep as a normal, natural, an underprivileged young girl, and you drove me away. What good is your religion if it's not serving mankind? And she woke up from that dream startled and uh, apologetic. She ran to the temple, said sorry to the goddess, and made a very important announcement and a very important, she said the rule in our household, which said, while you're preparing the bhog, if anybody comes to your door, no matter who he is, man, woman, child, from whichever caste of the society. We are upper class, privileged Brahmins, zamindars, but no matter who comes to your door, even before you make an offering to the god, you must make an offering to that human being because humans come first before the gods. If you're not serving humans, you're not serving God. And the entire village was invited to come and have that bhog, and that has been a rule. So whenever we have Kali Puja at home, anybody and everybody is allowed to come into the temple premise to have that bhog. And even as I prepare bhog for every Durga Puja, Kali Puja, Saraswati Puja at home, um, I make it a point to ensure that while I'm in the process of cooking that special meal for my goddess, if there's anybody or trying to, if there's a hungry soul in the periphery of my existence, I offer that, I make that offering to that human being first. So there are, absolutely, it's another story of having no biases whatsoever, but making sure that it's humans are treated first before we uh, call ourselves spiritually enlightened enough to appease the gods. So that's one story from my own household, and it's obviously very inspiring. We've been led by it. We've grown up with that principle, and I come from a family of very religious. I wouldn't say orthodox, but very religious, very spiritual, very committed to making the bhog, preparing it, pujas and prayers and ceremonies are a part of my life. But this story or this incident in the family has left a very, I would say, an indelible mark in my own existence and how I think. So that's one part of it on how bhogs are prepared, was prepared and shared with everyone in my family. Till date, like I said, I do pujas at home on a very regular basis. And every Friday, actually, I do a Lakshmi puja and I prepare some sweets, the payesh or some sort of an onno bhog for the goddess. And I have a Filipino helper at home. She's absolutely allowed to come into the kitchen and help and do what she wants to do. The reason why I don't let anybody else cook it is because it's my way of saying, okay, I own this piece, so I'm going to do it. It's not because somebody is from a different religion or a different caste. And whenever we have at home, my friends are more than welcome to come and do their bit. And I'm also very delighted to see that outside, I don't know how much it happens in India, but outside of India, when Bengalis or Hindu communities gather together and make a community festival, or they're in a community festival where they're celebrating, say, a Durga Puja or a Ganpati or any of the pujas, I have seen people from all walks of life, no matter what caste, creed, religion, or they have come together and they come together and prepare the bhog, which is such a great thing, which is such a shift from that tyrannical belief that only Brahmins are supposed to be cooking this. And this happens in Singapore. I live in Singapore. I've seen that during Durga Puja. No matter which caste you represent, you are allowed to come in and participate in the preparation of bhog. And it's a changing mentality. And I'm so happy I'm part of that. And I see that progress happening. And I've seen friends who are non Brahmins take that, ask that question, why can't I, why am I limited to only making puris and chana and the atta ka halwa for the bhog? Why can't I prepare what I eat? Why can't I give it to my god? And since they have raised those questions, I think it's important for everybody to know that that decision lies with you. I mean, no one's stopping you from doing it. And I see a lot of my non-Brahmin friends doing that. They prepare the bhog, they offer it to the gods and goddesses that they pray in all the prayer ceremonies. And there is no Bhagwan ka cope going to happen to you if you're a non-Brahmin and preparing rice. It's all in your belief, and it's all, we are all equals in the eyes of God. So I think I'm seeing those biases being broken, and that's such a refreshing change. That's my story. I mean, I have only personal experiences to share.
Thank you very much for a very engaging talk, ma'am. We will now move on to the question and answer session. My first question is for Ms. Ghosh. In your recent article titled Discomfort Food, published in the Dhaka Tribune, you have explored at length the political violence and symbolic distress associated with food and eating in literature. Given the fact that various communal vices are involved in the cooking of food for religious occasions in India, would you say they similarly function to make the experiences of eating and its memories unpleasant?
Yeah, thank you for that very incisive question, Stella. I do believe it definitely influences the eating as well, the consumption of particular food items by particular communities, because the biases can be so entrenched. For example, in that very article that you mentioned that I wrote, Discomfort Food, I have, given instances from writers like Manoranjan Bapari, how the very act of eating a meal after a hard day's work, traumatized him. It became a very traumatic, very humiliating experience because his hostess would literally, she would throw the food, onto his plate from a height so that, it didn't come in, none of that came in contact with her. And it would be served to him in a misshapen plate. That plate could not even be taken inside the house. He had to keep it in the cow shed, uh, with the cows. So which was his job? It was his job to clean the cow shed. So he had to wash it and keep it there. He had to sit at a corner of the uthon, which again is outside the precincts of the main covered area of the house, and eat in that kind of a very humiliating way. And the very reason he took up this job was that he was promised a meal of rice every day, and rice was so scarce in his personal experience, in his family. They could not afford eating rice. That was the kind of the incentive that drew him to accept this job offer. And then he had this kind of an experience actually consuming rice. So similarly, at temples, when somebody is barred from entering for whatever reasons, that can have a very lifelong negative or uh, humiliating and traumatizing memory for a person who has been denied that opportunity, or who is offered food in this manner, as if uh, it's being it's that clearly marks who they are and what their place is in society. So yes, I do believe that it definitely influences the way it is eaten and consumed.
Thank you for answering that, ma'am. My next question is for Mr. Das. Professional cooking, since the days of yore, has been primarily regarded as the forte of men, with great epics like the Mahabharata celebrating Bhimsena and King Nala as the masters of the sacred art, even though there were indeed exceptional female cooks like Sita and Draupadi. Even the Sanskrit cookbook Pakadarpanam is attributed to King Nala, explicating in detail on the magical influence of his skills on great sages, kings, and gods. How have such gender biases manifested themselves within present culinary trends as well?
Okay, answering to your question, yes, there is a gender disparity is a glaring issue in our current culinary industry. Now, cooking has been confined to duty for a woman, while as a man, it is a job that pays them very well. Now, according to industry surveys, shows that the men makes up to 80 to 90% of the chefs, while the women's held only 10% of the executive chef positions. Even though this 10% chefs, the women chefs earns nearly 22% less as compared to the male counterparts. Now, as a result, this stereotypical male dominated kitchen culture has led many females pursuing alternative career paths. Now, the girls who makes up to the majority of the student in hospitality classes, yet you will find very few to be working in a industry role like chefs. Now there is a general thinking in hiring managers that the kitchen is mostly a physical job where you need to have more mental and physical strength. And as a kitchen dominated by men, there might be incident where the women chefs feel uncomfortable. For this reason, the hiring manager tends to hire more men chefs instead of women chefs. Now, the question is how to breach this gender gap. Now, first of all the girls need to be encouraged to choose a intensive training at hospitality school to become a chefs, capitalizing on their talent and culinary skills, and can forego ahead to be a all-rounded workplace with gender parity. Now, women need to be encouraged to perform at to the best of their ability by providing them with a conducive environment in the culinary industry to showcase their skill. By introducing women-friendly policies, we can also address the harsh reality of the industry collectively. Now, women should not be forced to fit into the male dominated kitchen culture. Rather than they should be allowed to create a new culture for themselves and rise above the challenges. With more women rolling in this industry, surely this industry will prosper immensely in the times to come. Now, honestly, the culinary industry is taking a better shape for the women, as there are a number of women chefs coming into the limelight, like Chef Nadia Santini, Chef Garima Arora, Chef April Bloomfield, you name it. There are a lot of female chefs are coming, and even they are earning the Michelin star. Even in India, if we talk about, the first all woman managed hotel has been planned by IHCL, the Taj Group of Hotels in Chennai. The hotel name will be Taj Wellington, Chennai. Even if we speak about the mythology, also, you will find great female cooks like Draupadi and Sita. Also, I would like to mention about the head chef of Jagannath Mundi, which is considered to be Malukhi. To summarize this question, it is there is a gender disparity in the culinary industry, and to overcome it, we need to encourage the young girls to pursue their career in culinary and at a very beginning in their hotel school training, and also come up with the different policies within the industry to make the workplace more woman friendlier. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for answering that, sir. My next question is for Ms. Mukherjee. Do you think women's expertise as food preparers during specific religious ceremonies empowers them and challenges certain gender hierarchies, as well as bridges the gap between the sacred and the profane, the divine and the human?
I think it's both. I mean, it's I don't see it as being a gender specific issue. So it's irrespective of who you are. It bridges the gap between the divinity and the human, because you're cooking for somebody you love. It's pretty much like cooking for somebody in your family, right? When you're cooking, when a mother cooks a meal for a child or a wife cooks a meal for the husband and the family, they are putting in a lot of love and thinking about the person they're cooking for. Similarly, it is, and that's how I cook. When I'm cooking for my gods, without tasting the food, I'm thinking, I hope, Ma Durga is going to like it. I hope it turns out well, because I don't know how much salt I put in, or I don't know, I haven't tasted. So I don't think it's so much about men and women, because we've discussed, that there are temples where traditionally men have been the priests have cooked, because it is also, if you go back, look back into the past, it was not very uh, conventional for women to step out and go to a temple or go to somebody else's house and cook. So it was the men, the Bamun Thakur, therefore, instead of the Bamni going and cooking. But you would also see that there are times when in smaller temples, it is the priest and his wife. The wife would typically cook the bhog. So I don't think we can generalize in today's time and say that it allows, it empowers a woman to, that it bridges that gap. Uh, but whoever is cooking for religious purposes, I think what's most important is you have that faith, that you're cooking uh, for somebody you love, somebody you respect, somebody who's in your family, and that's your god. And it's just that, and that's the connection. It doesn't need to be, it's hardly about empowerment, and hardly about who's ruling the kitchen at that point in time.
Thank you for answering that, ma'am. My next question is for Ms. Ghosh. It is an ironic fact that while many of the advantaged sections of society hire maids for household work and as kitchen helps, yet the latter are more than often excluded from the entire process of assembling culinary items or cooking for religious purposes. What are your observations on such glaring instances of culinary appetite?
Yeah, I like that phrase, culinary apartheid. Um, yeah, it is again. It comes back to those biases that are so difficult, I think, to shake off and to get rid of. It just points us back to those entrenched biases, where, as you're right, the help would be taken in the in the pre-stage, like the stage before everything is actually offered. But when it comes to the final act of offering, it will always be, at least in temples and religious institutions, it will always be done as I mentioned in when I was talking about it in my initial thoughts, that the very act of presiding over rituals, doing the pujas, chanting the mantras, even offering the food is done by the Brahmin priests. But when it comes to the lowly act, so-called lowly act of slaughtering, um, and cleaning the animal or whatever, that is relegated to a lower caste person. So it's this kind of, we can call it hypocrisy, we can call it bias, whatever you call it. It comes from that completely irrational bias that has continued, to guide our choices or, the way we behave. If I may, I want to recall an instance which happened only in the last couple of weeks. Back in India, there was this person who ordered some food through Zomato, and when the delivery person came, this man who had ordered the food asked for the caste of the delivery boy, and when he learned that he was, a Dalit or a scheduled caste person, he misbehaved with that person. He thrashed him, and he like he chanted obscenities, and he said, how dare you, how dare you think that I can eat food that you have brought? And this is only a delivery person. He has not even prepared the meal or has had really no actual contribution in the making of the thing, but he is only just delivering a packaged meal, and then this kind of bias plays out. So it's still very much present. It's not disappeared. Uh, as Ananya mentioned, there are perceptions are changing, biases are, you know, are getting removed, especially when we live outside of the country. The differences sort of, they kind of blur, and it's not so easy to hold on to those biases. But they, unfortunately, they have not gone away, and they're still a very much a part of the psyche that kind of governs us.
Thank you for answering that, ma'am. My next question is for Mr. Das. Would you say religious and caste-based discriminations are comparatively lesser within urban settings and metropolitan cooking spaces such as five-star hotels or restaurants?
Yes, when we talk about the religious and caste-based discrimination in the urban setups, yes, there you will not find any kind of caste-based discrimination or the religion-based discrimination. In the five-star hotels, you will find the kitchen setup or the culinary setup in the five-star hotels and the restaurants are more professionals. They are more focused on the talent and the skills a chef possesses. It is not like there will if a person is from the lower caste or from other religion, they will be not getting preferred. You will find a very very balanced place to work in this kind of setup. It is not only about the five-star hotels and the urban spaces, but also you will find there will be no caste discrimination or religious discrimination even in the small food outlets, even the highway dhabas, you will not find any kind of discrimination to be done in this in a kitchen, where you will find all the caste and creeds from all different ethnicity. They are working together harmoniously. Now, this is because when you can say this is a hypocrisy of our society, that when it comes to the financials, we generally don't look after this caste or the religious setup. We more focused on getting our financials correct. We are more focused on earning the profits. So to earn the profits, to get the financial correct, uh, we as a society, we do not discriminate the chefs or the cooks to be cooking in the professional kitchens.
Thank you for answering that, sir. My last question is for Ms. Mukherjee. How do you look at the obsession amongst certain sections in India with the notions of purity and cooking, even when some of them are illogical, particularly those pertaining to separation of utensils for vegetarian and non-vegetarian food, refraining from entering the kitchen while menstruating, cleansing the kitchen space ceremoniously, etc.?
Like you rightly said, most of it is illogical. So long as it's clean, I think that's the most important part of it. You need to keep your kitchen clean, no matter who you're cooking for, whether it's for religious purposes or for your own personal use, your family. So I think that makes sense to keep it clean and sanitized. But the whole idea of separating, having separate utensils and saying this is like spoke about the Ato part. There's a big, section of the Indian society, still the Hindus, Bengalis in particular, have a rack in the fridge which is supposed to be vegetarian, and God only knows how they differentiate between a non-vegetarian fridge and a vegetarian fridge, and a vegetarian rack in the fridge, and this is Ato, and that is not to be touched. And if you have touched this with your right hand, you can't use your left hand. It's absolutely illogical and makes no sense in today's time and space. And I think where we have moved from that area of spreading cholera or whatever, I think it was more about sanitization than anything else. So yes, cleanliness is important, but the rest is absolutely logical, makes no sense. And when a woman is menstruating, if she's not in pain, she's not, she doesn't have a contractable disease that she needs to stay away from the kitchen. So it's not like she's going to spread infection, or she's going to be, unless she's tired and she's, I mean, probably again, the reason why women were barred from doing a lot of household work when such rules were created were because she needed that rest. But if she is able to manage herself fine, there's no reason why she shouldn't be entering the kitchen. I don't think so many people are, I mean, so many women are stopped from entering the kitchen when they're menstruating, but mostly I do see, especially for religious purposes, when there is, I mean, you can't, obviously, you're not supposed to be cooking bhog or prasad when you're menstruating. You can't serve the bhog in an utensil that has where you've prepared chicken or mutton, and so, or served non-vegetarian food. Makes no sense. It's all going, who decides what gods eat? I mean, when did God ever come back and whisper to you in your dreams, this is my menu, this is what I like, and this is how I like to be served? There are also biases or weird assumptions that you can't serve it with a cutlery because cutleries are supposed to be things of the West, and you kind of you know your food is less pure if you've kind of adulterated your food if it is served with cutlery. Ma Durga anyway has 10 hands. I'm sure she can eat with her 10 hands, and she should be happy. And I don't know, when did God come back and say, I need this and I don't need that? So it's all made up. It's all a figment of our own imagination, a part of the society that was probably trying to dominate and make its own space. The Brahmins, I come from that society or that caste, but I'm taking the blame on behalf of my community, saying that we are the ones probably somewhere because we felt we were not getting the importance that we needed, and we created all these rituals and everything around us so that we got our, we could have our identity and have some power in the society. And so everything is routed through the Brahmin. Like when, why, whoever said so. So I don't think God appointed a Brahmin as his or her secretary. So where is the spokesperson coming from? So yeah, I completely disagree, and I don't subscribe to any of that.
For answering that, ma'am. With that, we come to an end to tonight's discussion. I thank each one of you for taking your time out from your extremely busy schedules and uh, for sharing your knowledge and valuable insights with us. I'm sure our audience had a wonderful time and have learned a lot as well. Thank you for being a part of this discussion. It was an absolute pleasure to have been in your company this evening. This is to
Thank
remind that we are calling for submissions on food and drinks, the details of which can be viewed on www.tellmeyourstory.biz. Good night and take care, everyone.
Thank you for having us, Stella. It was lovely to hear from Saikat and Bhaswati.